Okay, here we are back with the Midland 13898B 23 channel AM sideband base station radio. It is crystal synthesized. This is one was sent to me for a customer who wasn't sure if it worked or not. It was apparently really nasty when he got it, and he removed most of the I guess 30 plus years of goop and grime and dust bunnies and dirt out of it. And I've finished cleaning it. You can see it's nice and shiny now. Got the top cover cleaned up, the front, front's all cleaned up, all the, big piles of dirt that were still in all the corners of the display and everything, it's all been cleaned out. And it's had a transceiver alignment. This one needed the AC power cord socket replaced because it was busted out. I'm assuming it probably had a power cord in it and it got jammed back into a wall or something and it just snapped out into the radio. So that's been replaced with one exact copy of this, exact same thing, same vintage and everything, so no change there. When I was changing this, I did run across the bypass cap, safety cap on this that runs from, because both of these leads here are the AC coming into the radio, and then this is DC switching. But anyhow, off of this one, there is a ceramic capacitor that goes to the chassis of the radio. I changed that. And that would be this little guy right here. See, it's a 471 or 470 picofarad. Okay. Now, like I say, this goes from the AC line to ground. I always recommend changing these in radios, especially old tube type radios. But the main reason is these are on all the time. If this radio is plugged in, this capacitor is on because it is hooked directly to the power line. It's not after the switch, it's before the switch. So, if your radio's been plugged in for 20 years and never turned on, there's one thing that's been on in that radio, that's this capacitor, doing its job for the last 20 years. And this one, when I unsoldered it, I was able to see the backside, and it kind of did a poor job of manufacturing this one, because the epoxy dip, you see that line there, it didn't get dipped the whole way. So you can see the plates. Well, look what it did. Now, I don't know if it did this because of maybe moisture, but you see those two black spots? It actually arced. Get it back into focus. Come on, guy. Just doesn't want to focus on this little thing. But anyhow, it's visible, it's arced. And then there's actually like a gray or, black. You can see where there's a mark on that substrate under there where it actually flashed across. So this has been replaced with a modern X1, Y2 safety rated capacitor, so that's been changed. The AC socket's been changed. And the only other thing done was to remove these two wires that someone had jumpered out that large 10 watt resistor in the audio modulation line, which was causing this thing to, when you put this jumper someone made up in the back in the center RCA jack, they had it wired, so when you plug that in, this thing was dead keying like 12 watts and swinging over 25. Well, radios with two finals, dead key 10 watts. So a single 1307 trying to dead key 12 watts. Yeah, you can imagine its lifespan would be about the end of this video. So that was undone. So it's back to 100% original. Now that the AC socket's in, I was able to see the clock, and you can see the clock is running. It's ticking away, and the alarm, all the functions work on it, so it automatically, you can set it to auto, where the radio will, as long as you have the power button pushed in, the radio will be off, but when the alarm kicks on, the radio will come on, or you can set it to alarm, and it just has a little arm in there, it buzzes back and forth as a buzzer, so you can have either the alarm buzzer or automatically turns the radio on. It's currently hooked up to the signal generator over here and being fed a 0.05 microvolt signal. And that is as low as that signal generator goes. And for people in the familiar with decibels, let's see, amplitude, dB, that's a minus 133 dBm. Yeah, there's just no negative indicator over here, but that's minus 133 dBm. So here is receive. That's why I like cybernets. Listening monsters. 0.05 microvolts, and this thing's got great reception on sideband. And let's get her set up for AM. And so there's the same level. Minus 133 dBm or 0.05 microvolts. That's the exact same level in AM. That's actually not bad for AM. You can hear the signal very clearly, and if you go up to even just 0.1, it really... So yeah, old Cybernet chassis, definitely listening monsters, that's for sure. So, meter lights were changed. And there's not a lot. One thing I did want to show, I'll flip this around, get it unhooked here, as a matter of fact. I wanted to show, Mark, if you watch this, we talked about TVI filters and how, in the older radios, and let me just pause this a second so I can get this flipped around actually. Okay. Talked about TVI filters and how the old tube radios, pretty much all of them had the 54 megahertz trap circuit in the radio after the final. People always tinker with them, but in the old tube radios, they were usually accessible from the outside of the radio, and it was labeled as a TVI, or television interference adjustment. Well, this is a solid state radio, and guess what it has? Not sure if you can see that for the glare. That actually says TVI stamped in it right there, and that's what that's designed for is to then accept a alignment tool like this. It's got a ferrite core in it, just like it would if it was on the inside. It just happens to be accessible from the outside. But that's how you adjust. And back in the day when this radio was made, what you would do is just turn a radio or turn a television on in this in the room you're in or in the adjacent room, and you would adjust the TVI. Same thing with the old tube type radios that have an external TVI adjustment. You would tune this for minimum interference on your television. Don't really have to worry about that nowadays so much. Everything's digital. We're no longer really using analog. But yep, just wanted to make sure I pointed that out for you, Mark. That, yeah, even in solid state, you don't see that very often. But some of them had the TVI adjustment on the outside, even on the solid state rigs. So there you can see the new power jacks installed in there, exact factory one with the little switch in the top of it. So this thing is ready to go. Oh, one other thing, because this isn't actually screwed on, let me get this cover pulled off so I can show something here. And this is just kind of a curiosity for techs probably. Let me get the overhead light turned on here. When you adjust for suppressing the carrier on sideband on these radios, most people are familiar with, you might have two trimmer capacitors or two trimmer resistors, or a trimmer capacitor and a trimmer resistor, or some of them might have a coil and a cap, or a coil and a resistor. Well, this one's kind of an oddball one because it actually has three adjustments. It has one of each. This trimmer capacitor, this coil, and this trimmer resistor. So actually all three of these are used to suppress the carrier on sideband, which it has very good suppression. I was very impressed. Actually, I'm very impressed. This radio, they are a bit of a pain in the neck to adjust because every single crystal in these radios has its own dedicated, ceramic trimmer cap, which is needed because you have to be, for sideband, all these need to be tuned in, but that just adds a lot of steps when you're doing an alignment because every single one has to be calibrated. Where normally in a modern day radio you'd have 2 or 3 adjustments for frequency, and that's pretty much it. This one, yeah, you can see you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, yeah, 10, 14, 15, 16. Yeah, there's 16 in place of 3. They do get worse than this, actually, and that would be the Tram D201A 40 channel. That's probably the worst radio to align in the history of man because where most CB manufacturers, when they went from 23 channels to 40 channels, went to solid state or a PLL circuit. Nah, not Tran. When they did the D201, they basically just added all the crystals they needed to get the additional frequencies and added even more, as if it didn't have enough trimmer caps already to adjust. They added all those additional crystals, and of course that adds a lot of expense in a radio. Cutting all those quartz crystals, getting cut, that's not cheap. That's why most manufacturers were, they were singing the praises when the PLL chips came around, because it was so much cheaper than buying all these crystals. But yeah, like I said, this one was very close. I mean, probably the farthest I saw any of these crystals out was like 30 to 40 hertz. That's really, really close. I mean, it was almost in alignment. It hadn't been touched. Reception came up drastically. I did get a lot of improvement out of reception. It's right where it should be for a Cybernet chassis now, especially with, why I like the Cybernet chassis. Big crystal filters, so you get excellent sideband, reception quality with a minimum amount of noise, and any adjacent channel splatter and whatnot. So yeah, this is a good, fully functional radio, ready to be put back into use. And nice thing about radios like this, if someone gets a radio like this, for people that aren't familiar with back in the crystal synthesizer days, most people were familiar with nowadays PLL circuits, solid state. Well, if they want extra channels, they just, usually cut a circuit trace, add a toggle switch, and they're good to go. Well, back in the day, or even if you wanted to convert this, you'd try to get your, modern day CB channels from 1 to 40. Well, this is only 23. Easy way to do that is you get something like a Siltronics VFO 90, but you get an external VFO. It would replace a crystal in the radio, and then when you turn your channel selector knob, to whatever channel for whatever crystal you had removed, and basically plumbed in the VFO line, your external VFO line, then when it's in that channel position, the channel selectors won't be doing anything. You'll be actually tuning it in with the external VFO. But like I say, it's fairly easy to get your full 40 channels on one of these. You just need to do it old school with a VFO, with an external VFO. So there you go, the fully up and running Midland base station. Like I say, and actually this was made in, I might be able to get some of this white paint off the back maybe. Not that anybody will ever see it, but this was made in December of 1975. Try and get that reflection. Kind of hard to see how it's stamped in there, but yep, December 1975. So, a classic.